I was raised in a tiny Nebraska town called Havenwood, where endless waves of emerald corn stretched to meet the skyline, and our lives were anchored by peaceful Sunday gatherings at the local church. The prairie winds were my faithful friend in those days, whispering through the towering stalks with secrets too profound for my young mind to grasp. My parents were hard-working farmers, their palms weathered from countless seasons of tilling the earth, their shoulders stooped from sacrificing everything to give me opportunities they never knew. A chance to break free from the fields and carve out a future beyond our vast, amber landscape. Life back then had a beautiful simplicity to it. Each day began before sunrise, the morning air crisp and biting as I followed Dad into the fields, lugging heavy seed buckets while Mom tended to our clucking brood at home. When evening came, we'd gather around our well-worn oak table, sharing hearty plates of meatloaf or fresh-caught catfish, the kind of sustaining meals that filled both stomach and soul. My parents rarely spoke of their own aspirations, but their actions spoke volumes. Every plowed field, every work-hardened hand represented another stepping stone they laid down, hoping I'd use them to climb beyond Havenwood's borders toward greater horizons. That sense of purpose became my compass. During my teenage years, while classmates were busy with typical high school mischief, I buried myself in studies, envisioning a future that didn't involve farm equipment. Though my parents never explicitly said it, their pride was palpable when I received my acceptance letter from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. To support myself, I picked up work at a local coffee shop, the daily grind, spending hours making drinks and maintaining the busy counter space. That's where destiny introduced me to Nora. She walked in one stormy day, droplets cascading from her jacket, her radiant smile piercing through the dreary weather like a ray of hope. As she ordered her latte, I nearly ruined it, distracted by her presence. Nora possessed an extraordinary quality, combining understated confidence with genuine warmth and eyes that seemed to peer into your very essence. Our connection grew over scattered coffee beans and late evening shifts. She was pursuing finance, brilliant and determined, with ambitious career goals. I was just a small-town boy searching for my path, but in her presence, I felt like I'd already discovered something invaluable. Our love blossomed swiftly and steadily, much like the familiar cornfields of my childhood home. Post-graduation, I secured a position in logistics with a transportation company, prompting our relocation to Denver for a fresh beginning. When our children arrived, first Jasper, then Sadie, Nora chose to step away from her promising career in banking. The memory of her cradling our little ones in our modest apartment remains vivid, her endearingly off-key lullabies filling the space while I worked extended hours to keep us afloat. We harbored ambitious dreams back then. A house with sprawling grounds, educational savings for the children, perhaps even a family expedition to witness the majesty of the Grand Canyon. Her sacrifices for our family were immense, and I believed I'd forever hold that gratitude close. At least, that's what I told myself. But here's where the narrative takes an unexpected turn. In retrospect, I find myself questioning whether I overlooked something crucial, some hidden darkness lurking within those seemingly perfect years. The life we'd carefully constructed, which I believed was unshakable, proved to be precariously balanced, awaiting just one powerful gust to topple everything. And believe me, that wind was approaching more rapidly than I could have anticipated. Before delving deeper into this tumultuous tale, I'm curious. Where are you tuning in from? Share your location in the comments. I'd love to know who's joining me on this journey. If you're intrigued by what's coming next, don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss the upcoming revelations. You see, I thought I had Nora figured out, thought I understood us completely. 2 decades of marriage, 2 children, a shared mortgage. These seemed like unbreakable bonds. But sometimes, in a single moment, everything you believe in can completely unravel. For me, it began with an inexplicable discomfort, a persistent ache in my stomach that I attributed to excessive coffee consumption and mounting stress. I dismissed it for weeks, assuming it would eventually subside. Then, on one clear autumn day, I visited a Denver clinic, expecting a simple solution, perhaps just a prescription for my troubled stomach. Instead, I received a document that would alter my reality forever. And before that day concluded, I witnessed something through a diner's window that would shatter my world, a secret so profound, it made me question whether those prairie winds had been trying to warn me all along. The persistent ache in my stomach had been my unwelcome companion for weeks, a dull, constant reminder I'd dismissed as inconsequential. I blamed it on countless nights, poring over shipping schedules, or perhaps that questionable roadside diner burger from several weeks ago, finally exacting its revenge. I'd swallow an antacid, steel myself, and press forward. However, as autumn approached, the discomfort transformed into something more sinister, its intensity growing until it demanded attention. That's how I found myself, on a dreary Wednesday beneath Denver's cloud-laden sky, walking into a modest clinic along Colfax Avenue, convinced I'd leave with a prescription and a gentle reminder about moderating my coffee intake. The clinic's atmosphere was thick with the sharp scent of disinfectant mingled with day-old coffee, the kind of setting where minutes stretch endlessly. I absently thumbed through a worn automotive magazine, attempting to tune out the harsh, overhead lighting's persistent hum. My name's echo through the waiting room led me to follow a nurse down an austere corridor into a claustrophobic examination room, its walls seeming to harbor unspoken knowledge. Dr. Helen Ortiz entered, her expression carrying a weight I couldn't decipher. She dispensed with pleasantries, took her seat opposite me, and slid a clinical document across the surface, delivering words that struck like lightning. End-stage liver disease. Half a year, possibly less. Her voice became distant as she detailed biopsy findings and care options. I fixated on that paper, those stark letters spelling out my remaining time, feeling reality shift beneath me. 6 months. Not the years or decades I planned for. Just months. I emerged from the clinic disoriented, the bitter Colorado wind stinging my face as I stumbled toward my truck. Despite my trembling hands, I managed to drive, directionless, using movement to keep overwhelming fear at bay. My thoughts whirled chaotically. Jasper's upcoming graduation, Sadie's future wedding, Nora's morning laughter. Everything was dissolving like morning mist. Seeking refuge, I pulled into the Crossroads Diner, a time-worn establishment off I-70 where truckers gather to share tales over endless cups of coffee. The flickering neon cast an eerie glow across the parking area. I chose a spot away from the semi-trucks and dragged myself to a window booth. A server, her eyes reflecting years of late shifts and her voice roughened by cigarettes, placed a cup of coffee before me that remained untouched. I sat motionless, watching the highway traffic, struggling to comprehend how my carefully constructed life was rapidly unraveling. That's when I noticed it. Nora's silver SUV, the one I'd gifted her on our 3rd anniversary, stationed 2 rows away. Initially, I dismissed it as mere chance. Perhaps she'd stopped for a quick meal. Then my eyes caught the gleaming BMW parked alongside, its pristine front grille reflecting the diner's harsh lighting. A knot formed in my gut, more piercing than the medical diagnosis I'd just received. Leaning forward against the window pane, peering through the gathering darkness, I witnessed my world shatter. There, behind the BMW's steering wheel, sat Victor Hayes, an attorney who'd worked with Nora during her time at a Lincoln law firm. I'd encountered him once at a company gathering, all designer suits and condescending handshakes. And there was Nora, stretching across the center console, her hands resting on his shoulders, sharing a kiss that was neither brief nor unintentional. It was unhurried, comfortable, suggesting countless previous encounters. My coffee cup clattered against the table, but I remained frozen. They separated, sharing laughter, her head tilting in that familiar way she used to when teasing me about my poor attempts at humor. Victor spoke something that made her playfully smack his arm, their interaction radiating intimacy. My chest constricted, my breathing labored as realization struck. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a concealed existence, masked behind every good-night embrace, every shared dinner. The waitress approached, inquiring about my well-being, but I dismissed her, my gaze fixed on the scene before me. Nora stepped out, adjusting her jacket, scanning the area, missing my truck concealed in the darkness. She didn't detect my presence, but I witnessed it all. I couldn't return home that evening. The thought of entering our house, pretending the medical report in my pocket and that witnessed kiss weren't real, was unbearable. Instead, I drove to the dusty Spur Motel, a dilapidated establishment with flaking paint and a flickering vacancy sign that hummed like an expiring insect. I checked in, collapsed onto a sagging mattress reeking of dampness, and stared upward. 6 months of life remaining, and my life partner was dismantling our relationship with another man. The wind outside rattled the window pane, wailing like it had in Havenwood, but now it seemed to mock me. Sleep proved elusive that night at the dusty sperm motel. The ancient mattress protested beneath my weight, the air heavy with musty decay, but these weren't the culprits behind my insomnia. What kept me awake was the haunting image seared into my consciousness. Nora's intimate gestures with Victor, her carefree laughter floating through that diner window like a cruel joke. As dawn approached, painting the horizon in shades of wounded purple, something crystallized within me. The initial waves of shock and betrayal transformed into something harder, colder, more purposeful. I refused to spend my final 6 months watching everything dissolve. If life had dealt me a losing hand with a ticking clock, I'd rewrite the rules entirely. Rising from the bed, I retrieved my phone and began strategizing. The first target was Mile High Express, the trucking company I'd dedicated 2 decades of my life to building. It represented more than just my professional pride. It was financial leverage that Nora couldn't touch. Then there was our shared life, the house, savings accounts, every asset we'd accumulated together. I'd convert it all to liquid assets, channel everything to our children, Jasper and Sadie, leaving Nora nothing but the web of deception she'd woven. My fingers moved swiftly across the screen, crafting notes, formulating a plan that gathered momentum like an approaching thunderstorm. But I needed concrete evidence, something tangible to show the kids, ensuring they'd understand the truth after I was gone. That's when Ray Kessler came to mind. Ray's name had surfaced through a driver at work, someone whose ex-wife had been caught embezzling from their shared finances. A private investigator with a police background, he specialized in unearthing uncomfortable truths without fanfare. I located his contact information online and dialed from the motel's damaged landline, reaching him on the second attempt. His voice rasped like morning gravel, carrying the remnants of a recent cigarette. I relayed my observations at the crossroads succinctly. Nora, Victor, the BMW. No emotional embellishments, just facts. Ray kept his questions minimal, essential details, descriptions, patterns. He committed to surveillance, promising photographs and possible audio recordings. Clean, efficient, professional. After hanging up, I felt a spark of authority return for the first time since receiving my diagnosis. Next, I reached out to Paul Grayson. We'd been close since our college days, when he'd enthusiastically dissect market trends over cheap pitchers of beer. These days, he commanded respect as a financial advisor, occupying a prestigious corner office in downtown Denver. I managed to catch him during his commute, his voice cutting through the static of his Bluetooth as he navigated morning traffic. I didn't mince words. Terminal illness, company sale, urgent timeline. Paul absorbed the news with a moment of weighted silence, then assured me he'd connect me with a serious buyer before the week was out. He didn't dig for explanations or offer empty sympathies. That's what I appreciated about old friendships. They understand when action trumps conversation. Then there were my children, Jasper and Sadie. These were the complications I couldn't simply resolve with a phone call. Though the weight of my situation felt suffocating, I needed to hear a familiar voice that reminded me of better times. I found myself staring at Jasper's number, my finger hesitating over the call icon. When he answered after 3 rings, his voice carried that sleepy warmth of a college student, likely still in his dorm room at Boulder. "Hey, Dad," he greeted me. "Everything okay?" I fabricated a story through clenched teeth, explaining that I was feeling under the weather and might be unreachable for a few days. His concern became evident as he probed further, asking about the severity, his tone reminiscent of childhood days when he'd worry about my late-night trucking runs. I forced a chuckle, dismissing it as a minor illness, but emotion constricted my throat. The urge to confess everything, the terminal diagnosis, Nora's betrayal, was overwhelming. But I couldn't burden him. Not now. I expressed my love, ended the call before emotion could betray me, and sat alone in the dimly lit room, surrounded by deafening silence. That's when the cold reality struck harder. Ray's words about habits echoed relentlessly, Nora's habits. Those countless book club meetings, drinks with former colleagues, suspiciously lengthy gym sessions. I never questioned any of it. Never felt the need to. Now each memory unraveled, like pulling a loose thread from what I'd thought was an unbreakable bond. What other secrets lay buried? How long had this deception been festering? Grabbing my keys, I stormed out of the motel room, letting the door slam behind me. The time for running was over. Now I was on the hunt. The drive from the dusty Spur Motel felt like wading through a mental haze I couldn't disperse. My fingers clenched the steering wheel, knuckles blanched, as I mentally reviewed the pieces I'd put into play. Ray's investigation, Paul's buyer's search, my children still unaware. But meticulous planning wasn't sufficient. Jasper and Sadie deserved to know everything. The complete story before time slipped away. I refused to let Nora craft her own narrative after my departure, portraying me as the villain who deserted them. I sent them both a brief text. Meet me at the bean scene in Colorado Springs tomorrow. Family matters. Love you. A neutral location, distant enough from Denver to avoid Nora's detection. Later, I collapsed onto the motel bed, highway sounds drifting me into fitful slumber. The following morning, I arrived ahead of schedule, claiming a secluded booth where cinnamon and coffee aromas intertwined. The cafe was subdued, with only a handful of regulars sipping coffee and browsing newspapers. Jasper entered first, his tall frame wrapped in a hoodie, searching until his eyes found mine. Sadie followed, her swinging ponytail belying her subdued demeanor. They settled into the booth, their unspoken questions evident in their expressions. "Everything all right, Dad?" Jasper inquired softly. Sadie remained silent, nervously biting her lip. I inhaled deeply, feeling the gravity of my impending revelation weighing heavily. I tackled the crucial part first. "I'm ill." I revealed, terminally ill. Liver failure, 6 months maximum. Sadie gasped, her hand covering her mouth, while Jasper remained motionless, processing my words as if they were incomprehensible. I continued, explaining about the clinic DR, Ortiz, how that diagnosis had shattered my future. Sadie's tears flowed freely, and Jasper reached out to comfort her, his expression tense. Each moment was excruciating, watching their reality crumble, but there was more they needed to know. "Your mother," I continued, maintaining composure despite my internal turmoil, "has been involved with someone. Victor Hayes, the attorney from her previous workplace. I discovered them together, and this isn't recent." The atmosphere crackled with tension, thick and charged. Sadie's tears froze mid-fall, her expression morphing into stark disbelief. "What?" she exclaimed, her voice carrying across the cafe, drawing a curious glance from a patron at the counter. Jasper leaned in, his hands clenched into tight fists on the tabletop. "Are you certain?" he demanded, his tone razor-sharp. I confirmed with a nod, recounting the scene at the diner, the kiss, and Ray's assignment to gather evidence. Sadie shook her head repeatedly, a litany of no, escaping her lips as if denial could erase reality. She suddenly jumped up, pacing restlessly near the window. Jasper remained seated, but his silence resonated louder than any thunderclap. When Sadie returned, her eyes blazed with fury. "I need to confront her," she declared. "I want her to admit it face to face." I grasped her hand, urging patience, promising we'd address this together. Jasper finally broke his silence, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm here for you, Dad, whatever you need." That evening, restlessness consumed me. My children's anguish ignited something within me, sparking a determination I hadn't experienced since this ordeal began. I contacted Apex Advertising, a boutique agency I'd previously hired for truck promotions. Tim answered, sounding drowsy until I outlined my plan. A prominent billboard, strategically placed near Victor's prestigious law office on Spear Boulevard. The words materialized with crystal clarity. "Victor Hayes, lawyer to my wife, expert in wrecking families." Tim wavered, questioning my resolve. "Dead serious," I confirmed, transferring the deposit before he could reconsider. By daybreak, it towered over commuter traffic, bold black letters broadcasting the truth to all of Denver. The response was immediate. My phone buzzed relentlessly, Nora's calls alternating with Victor's, voicemails accumulating with her tearful pleas and his legal threats. I ignored them all. News spread rapidly. A trucking yard colleague texted a photo of the billboard, reporting drivers honking and capturing images. Victor's client base began crumbling, his reputation deteriorating. Nora endured scrutiny at local stores, followed by judgmental stares. I felt a dark satisfaction, though it rang hollow. The memory of Sadie's tears and Jasper's clenched fists haunted me, churning my stomach more violently than my illness ever had. The billboard cast its shadow over Denver like an unrelenting storm cloud, but my work wasn't finished. With Victor's reputation in tatters across town and Nora's life dissolving into whispered gossip, I focused on what truly mattered, securing my legacy. Mile High Express sold quickly. Paul demonstrated his expertise, securing a deal with an Omaha-based logistics company. The transaction cleared swiftly, with a substantial check deposited into an account beyond Nora's reach. The following morning, I visited a realtor's office, housed in an unassuming brick building along Hampton Avenue, where I finalized the purchase of 2 properties. One near Jasper's Boulder campus, another within walking distance of Sadie's dormitory in Fort Collins. The deeds were placed directly in trusts, protected from Nora's interference. Every remaining dollar was channeled into a fund for their future, creating an impenetrable fortress of financial security. Yet I yearned to leave more than just monetary wealth, something meaningful and enduring. Over a plate of cold eggs at a local diner, I conceived Carver's Wheels, a scholarship program for Denver's underprivileged youth who, like me, survived on determination and dreams alone. I reached out to Denise, a lawyer who'd handled company contracts years ago. We met at a coffee shop, her laptop illuminated as we refined the details. Within a week, it became reality. Annual grants of $10,000 for 5 students, commencing next autumn. It felt meaningful, like planting a tree whose shade I'd never experience. However, my deteriorating health, the intensifying pain and sluggish movements, weighed heavily on my mind. Time was racing ahead, and I couldn't keep pace. Seeking respite from these pressures, I welcomed Marla Tate's call, a retired nurse I'd met through one of my driver's wives. She embodied no-nonsense warmth with her silver curls. She'd enlisted my help with Highway Heroes, a charitable barbecue supporting struggling retired truckers, hosted in a Lakewood park. I arrived as sunset approached, the atmosphere rich with barbecue smoke and country music. Tables groaned under platters of ribs and coleslaw, while veteran drivers shared road stories. Working alongside Marla at the grill, feeling the heat burn my palms, I found temporary relief. For those brief hours, the burden lightened. Their hearty laughter and clinking beer bottles offered a glimpse of life I could still grasp. I even managed a genuine smile when Hank, a weathered veteran, clapped my shoulder, expressing gratitude as if my simple contribution had transformed his entire day. Then I spotted her. Near a grove of pines across the park, Nora stood motionless, her coat wrapped tightly against the evening's bite. Her frame had withered, hair disheveled, with eyes sunken deep as if sleep had become a distant memory. She maintained her distance, observing silently like an apparition in the dimming daylight. My insides churned, not with the familiar rage, but something more complex, more nebulous. Marla noticed my fixed gaze, touched my arm, and questioned my well-being. I affirmed with a nod, yet her presence lingered like a stubborn splinter beneath my skin. Had she deliberately sought me out? Was this her wordless plea for redemption? I redirected my attention to the grill, but her presence persisted in my peripheral vision. Later at the motel, Jasper's call came through. His tone was composed yet resolute, with Sadie listening on speakerphone. They'd encountered Mom, he revealed, at a filling station near their place. "She's not doing well, Dad," Sadie interjected. "Not at all." She attempted to engage us, but we walked away. A moment of silence followed before Jasper delivered his thought. "We believe you should meet with her. Not for her benefit, but yours." I resisted initially, the old anger surfacing, but Sadie's words struck deeper. "Time's running short. We don't want this weighing on you forever." Fatigue washing over me, I massaged my temples and promised to consider it. Post-call, I paced the room restlessly, Diesel's collar chiming as he followed. My children spoke truth. This extended beyond just me now. But what would confronting her accomplish? Would it bring forgiveness, resolution, or merely reopen old wounds? Sleep proved elusive, the dilemma rolling endlessly like wheels on rough asphalt. By daybreak, I recognized the futility of perpetual avoidance. Nora remained an unresolved chapter, and my remaining time was too precious to leave it unfinished. However, this would happen according to my rules, not hers. Throughout the night, Jasper and Sadie's words echoed relentlessly, their voices repeating like a broken radio signal. The image of Nora at the cookout, a diminished version of my former love, combined with my children's urging to confront her. Not for her benefit, they'd emphasize, but for my own. Every instinct screamed resistance, yet time's march grew more insistent, my strength fading daily. Finally relenting, but on my terms, I messaged her from a disposable phone purchased at a service station. Tomorrow, noon, at the apartment. No didas. Her response came swiftly. Okay. It felt like setting a snare, though uncertainty lingered about who would ultimately be caught. The next day, I waited in my rented space near Aurora, a sparse dwelling with deteriorating wallpaper and a couch that dipped in its center. Diesel lay stretched at my feet, his silver-flecked muzzle twitching with dream-induced movements. The knock arrived punctually, gentle and uncertain. Opening the door revealed Nora, skeletal in appearance, her coat hanging loosely on her frame, deep hollows shadowing her eyes. She entered silently, avoiding eye contact, and the atmosphere grew heavy with unspoken history. I remained standing by the window, arms firmly crossed, and delivered my terms without warmth. No discussions about Victor, no justifications for my actions. Violate these conditions, and she be shown the door. Her mouth opened slightly, a tremulous breath emerging, but I silenced her before words could form. The reasons don't matter anymore, I stated coldly. You destroyed everything, Nora, and I've ensured you'll receive nothing, not the property, not any money. She recoiled, fingers intertwining nervously, but maintained silence. I continued, explaining how the children were provided for, the business dissolved, my inheritance secured beyond her reach. Then came my final demand. After I'm gone, be the mother they need. Not your past self, but someone worthy of them. Stay present, regardless of their resistance. That's my final request. Tears welled in Nora's eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she nodded weakly. I'd expected resistance, pleading, but instead heard, I've lost it all, Nate. You were my everything. Her voice shattered, raw with emotion, and momentarily, I glimpsed that young woman from the daily grind, laughing at my coffee-making mishaps. The memory pierced unexpectedly deep, but I suppressed it. I gestured toward the exit, declaring our meeting concluded. She hesitated, as if seeking to reclaim something long abandoned, before departing wordlessly. The door closed with a decisive click, like the final page of a finished story. The subsequent period merged into an indistinct blur. Jasper and Sadie alternated staying over, occupying the couch or spare bed, filling the space with conversation and carry-out meals. Diesel, whom I discovered at a shelter recently, a scruffy companion with expressive eyes, became my constant shadow. We'd watch classic westerns together, my children, the dog, and me chuckling at the corny dialogue until exhaustion overtook me. The pain had become unrelenting now, burning through my core, but their presence provided some relief. One evening, I awakened to Sadie's cooling touch on my brow, Jasper's silhouette in the doorframe, and understood the end approached. It arrived gently, not with the jarring force I'd anticipated. I reclined on the couch, with Diesel's substantial head resting in my lap, his rhythmic snoring providing comfort. Jasper sat cross-legged on the floor, immersed in an automotive magazine, while Sadie moved about the kitchen, preparing soup I knew would remain untouched. My breathing steadied, the surroundings melting into a warm haze, and I felt their hands envelop mine, Jasper's calloused grip, Sadie's tender touch. No fear gripped me, only tranquility, like drifting off in a Nebraska field as twilight descended. I smiled, released my hold, and let the familiar breeze carry me away. Nora received nothing, exactly as I'd orchestrated. The children maintained their distance, ignoring her attempts at contact, leaving her to face a solitary devastation. Victor's medical practice crumbled beneath the weight of scandal, for what I gathered. But my legacy, I left them something more valuable than wealth, a demonstration of resilience when foundations crumble. Life's too fleeting for bitterness, too valuable to excuse betrayal easily. That's the wisdom I'd share now, if given the chance. The journey concludes here. Was this ending what you expected, or did it surprise you? Share your thoughts below. If this story resonated with you, remember to like and subscribe for future narratives. Thank you for joining us, and we'll meet again in the next story.